Hey guys, this video we're going to look at how aggregate supply policies as a broad general concept can help achieve external stability. Now, as we've talked about in the previous lectures, we've assumed that aggregate supply policies, being the 4 different types of policies that we looked at in the aggregate supply policy lecture, can in fact improve supply side conditions. So we assume that by implementing aggregate supply policies, we can see that the aggregate supply line has indeed shifted to the right. So AS here being AS1 and that being AS2. This is a very, very rough graph of aggregate supply. So with an increase in aggregate supply, we can see how this may impact our external stability. So first of all, when there's an increase in aggregate supply, and we're going to assume, or the assumption, that aggregate demand remains constant, that firstly we have more exportable surplus. And what this means is that if we look at a numerical example, say initially we had $100 million worth of goods and services. Domestically we consumed 80 million. This is domestically, and therefore we're left with 20 million to export. So now let's assume that because the aggregate supply has increased in the economy to say $120 million worth of goods and services, and aggregate demand domestically hasn't changed, we can see that $80 million is still consumed domestically. However, now we have $40 million worth of goods and services to export. So our exportable surplus has increased by $20 million. And what this suggests is that if we are able to competitively price against our competitors, therefore exports would theoretically increase, and as a result this would see an improvement in our current account deficit. So current account deficit decreases, because as we know, one of the major components of the current account deficit is this balance on goods and services. And of course, by increasing exports, that would see more credits entering the economy, and therefore reduce our current account deficit. So that's one way our current account deficit could be reduced, through exporting more, through this increase in exportable surplus. Secondly, aggregate supply policies, especially some macroeconomic reform policies, expose businesses to stiffer competition. And so to survive, these firms would have to cut their production costs in order to make our exports more competitive. And so by increasing our efficiency and by increasing our productivity, this helps those firms who are actually comparatively advantaged on their overproduction than other firms around the world. This would see those firms surviving, and other firms who are not comparatively advantaged and that are very much inefficient closed down. And that would mean the country would be allocating its resources to its most efficient use, and therefore create a situation where we have minimized opportunity cost of our resources and maximize our living standards. And so how does that relate to external stability? It means that we are producing exports that are most efficient. So exports are most efficiently produced in markets where we have this idea of comparative advantage. Okay, so when we have comparative advantage, it means that our exports, or these exports, are the most competitively priced, I should say, in the world. And so, because they are competitively priced, this means again exports should increase, especially in those industries, and that would again lower our CAD. Similarly, because our exports have become more competitive due to this idea of stiffer competition, it also means that to purchase our exports, those overseas would have to demand our dollar. And by demanding our dollar, it would push up the exchange rate and therefore strengthen our trade weighted index and our exchange rate to our major trading partners. And so as a result, that would be another factor that will contribute to a very strong external stability situation where we are able to pay off our net foreign debt by using a fewer amount of Australian dollars. So as we know, net foreign debt is measured in overseas currencies, and when our Australian dollar appreciates, this means we are moving towards this goal of external stability because our net foreign debt can be paid off with fewer Australian dollars. And if you want to go into depth as to why this occurs, I'd encourage you to look at the lecture on the relationship between the Australian dollar, or the trade weighted index, and net foreign debt under the broad topic of external stability. So that's how aggregate supply policies can actually improve our external stability through 1, decreasing the current account deficit, and 2, strengthening our dollar so that our net foreign debt can be more easily repaid, and so that we are living within our means and paying off our financial obligations.